Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing The Republic by Plato and why you should read it if you haven't already. This book runs approximately 400 pages long is my edition. I have the Penguin's Classics edition. Depends on your copy, but mine runs 400 pages long. This book was published. I shouldn't say published, actually. I don't think that's the right word, but this book dates back to 375 BC. So a bit of an old work, but needless to say, it's absolutely timeless and everybody should read it. If you're interested in philosophy, even in the slightest, this is like in the top 5, maybe top 3 most essential works to read. So definitely pick this up. But yeah, today I'm going to provide you guys with an engaging summary that hopefully pushes you guys to go pick up this book for yourself. I'll provide you guys with some films that I think go well with Plato's Republic. I'll provide you guys with some documentaries that I also think goes well with Plato's Republic. And I'll provide you guys with some additional literature that I would branch off to after reading this. I might provide you guys with my favorite quote from the book as well. But before we get into all of that, I want to share with you guys a couple words on the author himself. Plato was a Greek philosopher born in an aristocratic Athenian family and a student of Socrates, who would later become the teacher of Aristotle. A founder of Western philosophy, Plato established the Academy in Athens, the first known institution of higher learning in the Western world. Through his dialogues, Plato shaped concepts that underpin logic, ethics, metaphysics, and politics. His works transcend time, continually challenging humanity to examine the nature of justice, truth, knowledge, and the soul. To read Plato is to drink from the original spring of philosophical inquiry. So yeah, there's a couple words on the man himself, and an interesting fact about Plato that you might not have known is his name itself, Plato, is actually Greek for broad, which was probably a nickname given to him for wrestling. He was a wrestler. We know that he competed in some games. I don't think it was the Olympic Games. It was something else. I can't remember at the time. I think it was Diogenes that wrote about this. I can't remember, but Plato was a wrestler, and he also competed in pancration, which is kind of a mix of wrestling and boxing. It was kind of the prototype for MMA, which is very cool because I grew up wrestling and boxing and kind of doing mixed martial arts. So to have a philosopher that, I also kind of engage in philosophy, not that I would call myself a philosopher, but to engage with a philosopher that has very similar interests to myself is very cool. And Plato, actually, he was supposed to be a playwright. That's what he was originally interested in until I think he met Socrates, was inspired by him, burnt all of his plays, so we don't have any of Plato's plays, and then became a philosopher, the philosopher that we know him as today. So here is a brief and engaging summary on the work, The Republic itself. The Republic is Plato's dazzling masterpiece, a timeless philosophical journey through the heart of justice, society, and the human soul. Structured as a dramatic dialogue led by Socrates, the text unfolds like an intellectual symphony, moving from everyday questions about morality to radical visions of an ideal city ruled by philosopher kings. Along the way, it explores the nature of the soul, the power of education, the seduction of illusion, and the meaning of truth itself, culminating in the immortal allegory of the cave. Through poetic myth and rigorous logic, The Republic challenges readers to examine not only how society should be governed, but how we should govern ourselves. It is a book that speaks across millennia, awaking the philosopher in all of us. So yeah, I hope that summary pushes you guys to go and pick up this work for yourself and engage with it on your own. For me, this work has taught me how to argue and how to argue correctly and truthfully and with some honesty instead of just tearing people down with ad hominem attacks and whatnot. So Plato and the way he argues, well, I guess he's talking through Socrates. He's expressing Socrates' voice throughout this work. But the way Socrates, I guess I should say, argues throughout this work is absolutely brilliant, and I've learned a lot from Socrates and of course from Plato as well. So I'll put up the works of Plato on screen right now. This is of course not all of them. Throughout his life he wrote 35 dialogues and 13 letters, but these are kind of the major ones, and I've collected the majority of the works that you've seen on screen now. So if you want to branch out past the Republic, these are some of the works that I would pick up next. So if you guys want to engage with some other philosophers, not just Plato, and you want some places to branch off to, here are 4 works that I would recommend. The first of which is the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. Aristotle, being the student of Plato, is probably a great place to branch off to after that. And yeah, what a lineage, eh? To go from Socrates to Plato to Aristotle, those 3 in a row is... I wish I was one of them. I don't know which one, but I wish I was there to learn from those guys and to see them in person. It would have been cool. But the next work that I'll suggest is Utopia by Thomas More. Again, another work that kind of goes through envisioning an ideal state. So it's similar to the Republic in that way. Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes, again, kind of similar to Utopia in ways. Another place that I would probably branch off to past the Republic. And lastly, I'll recommend The City of God by St. Augustine or Augustine, however you want to pronounce it. City of God is a work that I'm still myself trying to work through, but it's influenced me a lot, and I think it is very similar to Plato. I just think that it's kind of the Christianized or the Catholic version of the Republic in a way. So I'll make a video on The City of God eventually when I do finish that up and I'm done reading Augustine, because yeah, he's also had a tremendous impact on me as well. But as far as films that I would recommend reading along the Republic, there are a few that stand out. So I'm going to list for you guys 5 sci-fi films, 2 of which I think most of you guys probably have already seen. They're very popular, but 3 of which are hyper underrated sci-fi films, all 5 of which draw pretty much directly from the allegory of the cave. So the first film that I'll talk about is the most direct version of it. In fact, the Wachowskis had a copy of the Republic while they were writing the script. Now, there are other bits of philosophy sprinkled throughout, but The Matrix from 1999 is, of course, a direct adaptation of the allegory of the cave. Of course, it's got the sci-fi elements and the anime influence, Ghost in the Shell and all of that is all spliced throughout it, and it's a beautiful film. I'm sure many of you guys have already seen it. The second film is, of course, Inception. Kind of goes in a little bit of a different direction there, but still poses those questions of what's real when it comes to reality and stuff like that. So Inception, The Matrix, 2 of my favorite sci-fi films of all time. I'm sure many of you guys have already seen them, but the next film that I'll recommend is from 1998, and it actually got overshadowed by the release of The Matrix. A couple of the films that I'm going to mention today was overshadowed by The Matrix, and nobody remembers them anymore. But Dark City from 1998 is a fantastic film. It's not on the same level as The Matrix, but I would say that Dark City's as good, if not better, than the Matrix sequels, and not a lot of people have watched it for some reason. I think it's a very deep film and hyper underrated, I think. The next film is even more underrated than The Dark City, in my opinion, and it's 1997's Gattaca. It stars Uma Thurman, Jude Law, and Ethan Hawke, and somehow I never hear anybody talking about it. It's a film that feels like it was directed by David Lynch, but it wasn't directed by David Lynch, so it has Lynchian qualities to it. It also has one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. You guys will know it when you watch the film. The theme is just so beautiful. It whisks you away into this dreamlike reality, and I love Gattaca. Very underrated film. And the last film that I'll talk about today also stole some things from The Matrix, some would argue, but I think it's a very good film. I don't think that it should be overlooked, and it's from 2002. It's called Equilibrium, starring, what's his face? Christian Bale. Christian Bale's in that film. There's some other great actors in it too, but Equilibrium, another underrated sci-fi film that gets overlooked because of The Matrix that came out in 1999. Gattaca, Dark City, and Equilibrium tend to get passed to the side, and people only focus on The Matrix for some reason, but those other 3 films are fantastic. I highly recommend them, and like I said, all 5 films kind of draw from the allegory of the cave, so I thought that they would be interesting to mention today. So let's move on to 3 documentaries that are more directly linked to Plato that I would recommend. So the first documentary that I'll recommend is a BBC one. BBC makes fantastic documentaries, and I highly recommend that one. The next one is The Great Philosophers, the Brian Magee series on YouTube. You can go check that out, and he does have an episode on Plato. If you guys want more recommendations for like lectures on Plato, I can provide that too. I didn't make a list for you guys today. There's just so many on YouTube. You just search up Plato lectures, and they'll come up on YouTube, and most of them are pretty solid. So if you guys want direct recommendations for lectures, let me know down below in the comments, and I can provide that for you guys. The third documentary that I'll mention today, I mentioned it in my Why You Should Read Beyond Good and Evil video, is The Examined Life from 2008. It's just one of the best philosophical documentaries I've ever come across, and it ties together the ideas of a bunch of different philosophers, and it's a pretty solid one. So with that all out of the way, now that we've went over documentaries, additional literature, films, I gave you guys a summary on the book itself. I gave you guys a couple words there on Plato. To conclude today, I'm going to leave you guys with my favorite quote from the Republic. So, until philosophers rule as kings, or those who are now called kings, leading men genuinely and adequately philosophize, cities will have no rest from evils, nor, I think, will the human race. So yeah, I absolutely love that quote. I think about it often. Is it a perfect quote? No, I don't think. I think it's putting philosophers on a bit of a pedestal. I don't think philosophers are like the most morally perfect human beings or anything like that. I think maybe a better quote would be like our kings should be saints or something like that. But it pushes out a sentiment that, you know, the leaders of the world should be thinking deeply. They should be philosophizing. They should be asking themselves the questions of what does this all mean? You know, the deeper questions of morality and life and death and all that stuff. I think that that's true, and I think most people do agree with that. I think most people watching this video, most people in the world probably agree that our leaders should be the ones who think the deepest and who push thought the furthest, because those are going to be the people who lead us intellectually. And if you can't lead us intellectually, what makes you think you can govern us effectively, right? So there is a sentiment there that I do agree with, but I also think it's putting philosophers on a bit of a pedestal, which that's okay. I'm fine with that. But yeah, I love that quote from Plato. I love The Republic. I've read it once and a half already. I've read it once all the way through, and I've come back and flipped through it since then, but I'm going to reread it again shortly, front to back, and I'm sure I'll read it many times throughout my life, because it's a work that it's deep and it's dense, and you know, it's not difficult. I don't think it's a difficult work of philosophy, but you'll definitely come back to it many times, and the book will change, and you'll find new things in it. And it's those works that are the most important to engage with, and especially while you're young. So you can read it while you're a teenager, if you're a teenager watching this, or you can read it while you're in your 20s, and then you can read it in your 30s and it'll change for you, and you can read it in your 40s and it'll be a completely different book. And I don't mean that literally, but you know what I mean. You'll find new things in it. So yeah, definitely go out there, read The Republic, philosophize for yourself, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you guys have any questions about the book, let me know. If you guys have any recommendations for books that you want to see covered in this series in the future, let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.